Welcome back into the Dead Arm Sports Podcast, coming at you live on a Tuesday, last day of January. So February around the corner, Groundhog Day.
I was gonna ask, are you a big Groundhog's Day guy?
You know it. Get up early to check out Puxatawny Phil.
The next 6 weeks, is it?
I think so.
Something
like that. Yeah.
Let's go Groundhogs.
Got it down to a science, that's for sure.
Why is there no profession, at least like an XFL or like an AAF team that's called the Groundhogs? That's legit. I mean, I get that they're not intimidating, but you've got
not so much.
But I mean, you've got the Savannah Bananas. I get that that's, that baseball team is effectively the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball, but a banana's not very intimidating. You've also got the isn't there just a team called the Dill Pickles? Of course, this is minor league baseball. Portland Pickles. Yeah. Yes, of course, minor league baseball, but you'd think there'd be a minor league baseball team in South Dakota or something that would be the Groundhogs.
Yeah, never know. Might be.
Yeah, no, but yeah, there might shrimp. Be. Love it, gotta hug it.
I brought up some of the teams, Joe, because that's part of our question of the day today. I want to know, what 3 teams do you hate the most? It can be across all sports.
Portland Pickles, number 1 for sure.
Embodied.
I mean, St. Louis Cardinals, that's the easy number 1. I hate them so much, and I hate that I have to I hate how much I wish that the Brewers, that they were as successful as them, but Tony La Russa, back when he was their manager, he's effectively Satan. Just get him out. Mike Matheny, when he was their manager, anybody that touches that uniform, I cannot root for. I was never a Molina fan. I was cool with Pujols when he came back this past year, because how can I root against a 43-year-old Pujols going for 700 home runs? But everybody else on that team, you are now on my shit list. So Cardinals are the easy number 1. Beyond that, I mean, I've had a ton of disdain towards Ohio State, especially the football team. Never been a fan of Ohio State football. Again, another team where it's, with Badger football, we're just one tier, just a small tier. We're in that second tier of the Badger football's in that second tier, possibly third tier, wherever you want to go with that, below Ohio State. But it's God, that's the team that we just have not been able to get past. And then number 3, I mean, it used to be the Cubs. Now they're cute. I mean, now it's now that the Cubs are shit again, they're back to being cute. But during that 2016 run, I was kind of happy for the Cubs and for you and your brother and you guys for finally getting that W. But don't get me wrong, I was rooting for the Indians to win that World Series in 2016. So those are the 3 teams that really come to mind right off the bat. Other teams that I just don't root for in general, I grew up as big of a Kobe fan as you could find, so have never been a Boston Celtics fan, as big of a Derek Jeter fan as you can, maybe not as big as you can find, but definitely was a Jeter fan. So Boston Red Sox, that's a big hell no. Chicago, and then again, another Chicago team, the Bears. They've always been just this losing franchise.
Yeah.
I've never felt threatened by them, so it's hard to hate on them. But I mean, at this point, I almost feel so bad for them that I'm kind of happy they finally have a quarterback, because at least now I can look forward to, hopefully, as a Packer fan, hopefully some some sort of relevant games. It's been, as Rodgers has said before, I still own you. So Packers have they've owned the Bears throughout all of Rodgers' career and most of Favre's career outside of that one sexy Rexy year in, what was that, 06, when they made the Super Bowl and got stomped by the Colts. So I guess I'll throw the Bears in there as an outside looking in.
Sounds good. Mine also is the Cardinals. Cannot stand them. I will never cheer for them under any circumstance ever. Just no.
What about Pujols? Were you okay? Were you cool with Pujols?
When he came back, yeah, but I couldn't stand him.
That's what I mean.
He was
now
on them the first time. Yeah, and I mean, I loved Nolan Arenado and he was a Rocky, but nope, he's written him off until he changes teams. Yes.
Goldschmidt,
the only one I'm having a hard time.
It's like Goldschmidt to me as well.
Yep.
When he was in Arizona, like, wow, I admire his talents. I'm pretty impressed by him. He gets on the Cardinals, not interested in any sort of success that you have anymore.
Yep. Same with Wilson Contreras is now in that jumbo.
Is he falling into that? He's fallen into that group now?
Well, yeah, I can't cheer for him. He's a Cardinal.
So are you still like, so you're not even like reminiscent on the times that you had with him while he was a Cub?
Yeah, he was fine when he was a Cub, but I'll cheer for him again once he's no longer a Cardinal, whether that's retirement or moves on to another team.
What was that, a 5-year deal, right?
I think 5 years.
Yeah. All right.
Packers, definitely my top three, of course. And then a surprise third. I was trying to rack my brain, and there isn't really any teams that I necessarily hate, but I'm going to lump in whatever team LeBron is on as a team that I can't stand, because I cannot stand LeBron. So currently it's the Lakers. I cannot stand the Lakers. So
I got one more team, and shocker, Chicago. I'm actually going to put this team ahead of the Cubs and the Bears, the Blackhawks. Right when they got good, that's when we were going, like my class was going into high school, is like pretty much right when the Blackhawks got good. And for some reason, like every sports fan jumped on that bandwagon right. at my high school, and I could not stand it. So I'm going to put the Blackhawks as they're going to jump the Cubs and the Bears, and they're going to jump into that number 3 spot. Blackhawks, never going to root for them. Can't stand them. Just the first person bandwagon jumping that I saw was such a turnoff immediately. So I'm out. Blackhawks. That's my number 3 team.
Nice.
Screw them. Patrick Kane, idiot. Make it personal.
We can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Go to YouTube, type in Dead Arm Sports. That way you can see Joe grab his jaw in some sort of pain and discomfort
bit my
right now.
Freaking lip.
Remember my first time opening and closing my mouth. Go to YouTube, type in Dead Arm Sports, subscribe, click the bell there. That way you know when our live episodes drop.
Check that fireplace out.
Yes, fire is roaring in the background there. Joe can be found at DasJel. That's at DASJEL. I can be found at DasJPEC. That's at DASJPEC. Give us a follow there. You can ask us any questions there. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot, and you will get some swagalicious stuff in the mail. Have a big episode for you today. Going to go through the NFL Championship recap along with the Farmers Insurance Open recap, but about 2 hours ago prior to recording, had some huge coaching news drop. So we're going to kick it off with this coaching news to kick off the show here. And that is Sean Payton is going to be a Denver Bronco next head coach there, barring them being able to negotiate a contract. But a deal is in place with New Orleans. Denver's going to send over the 2023 first round pick that they got in that Bradley Chubb deal from Miami, and a 2024 second rounder to New Orleans for Sean Payton, and a 2024 third round pick. So pretty steep price to get in a head coach. That pick for Miami is going to be what, late teens, early?
Well, so I'm glad you brought that up. This is actually going to be so that the Dolphins forfeited their first round pick.
Correct. Yep.
From tampering with Tom Brady. So the only first rounder that they have is the one that San Francisco sent over in the Trey Lance deal when San Fran moved up from 12 to 3. The Dolphins pick at that time was 3. They used that third pick to get Trey Lance. So it's technically the 30th pick in the first round, but since Miami forfeited a pick, it's actually going to be the 29th overall selection in the draft. So 29th player in the draft overall, plus the following, it's plus the, what was it, 2024 second
so next year's
and
second
is it
round.
And then they're getting back at, is it a 2024
next year's 2024 third
right
rounder. Yep.
So little bit of nuance with that, but I mean, I thought that this was the most obvious play that Denver needed to make. There was some reports that Denver had reached back out to Jim, or it was a confirmed report that they had reached back out to Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh either for a second interview, Harbaugh either turned them down again, or I don't know exactly what happened there. But yeah, their initial, according to, again, current reports, is that their initial pick or their first number one candidate was DeMeco Ryans. And DeMeco Ryans wanted to go back to Houston. Now, I don't know if that's because, hey, he's getting a little bit more stability in Houston, for the next X amount of years. But yeah, I mean, them getting Sean Payton, do you think that this changes? How much do you think this changes their outlook? I mean, it was obviously the number one candidate that's available. Do you think he can fix Russell Wilson? Do you think he can tailor a Drew Brees type of offense for Russell Wilson? And Russ is going to be down with that. There's a lot of ego involved in that room between Payton, Russ, and Walmart ownership too. I mean, the Waltons, those owners there's a lot of ego there too. I feel like everybody's on kind of a short leash here. What kind of effect do you think Sean Payton's going to have on the ultimate success of Denver? Because they won 5 games last year. Do you think this is going to be a situation where, I guess let's just speak first off on Russell Wilson. Sean Payton goes out, okay. You go out on a date with somebody for coffee. And the shortest term outcome of that event is you get a coffee and that's it. And it's a one and done. The next event is you buy them a coffee and then you buy them a coffee the next morning. AKA things went well that day, that night as well. AKA Russell Wilson gets one more year under Sean Payton after this season. Or do you think this is going to turn into I bought her a coffee and now she's my wife, AKA Sean Payton, Russell Wilson marriage, or, match made in heaven, and now you're looking at long-term success. How do you see this playing out between these two squad, or I guess this head coach QB combination?
I think if there's anyone that will be able to get the most out of Russell Wilson again, it's probably Sean Payton. He's had so much success with a smaller quarterback in Drew Brees in New Orleans. Granted, Drew Brees is a heck of a lot better quarterback than Russell Wilson is, and has proved that throughout his career. But just an offensive guru like Sean Payton is, there's a lot of pieces in that offense to unlock here. And if he can, they're going to be very, very dynamic. But I don't know how much Russell has in the tank. Yes, we saw Nathaniel Hackett was a product of Aaron Rodgers' success and was just awful as a coach.
Garbage.
Awful. But he wasn't out there throwing the ball Russell Wilson at times last year for a good chunk of the season was missing receivers. I mean, it was ugly. I mean, he looked like he didn't have anything left in the tank and was just throwing it as hard as he possibly could to even get the ball like 20 yards down the field. It just was ugly. And I don't know if that was him just not really even wanting to be there and just kind of gave up on the season or what. I mean, it doesn't seem like that would be what Russ does, but I don't know.
Russ Bus.
Russ Bus, yes. But I don't know. It's hard to see them getting off of Russell Wilson with the contract that they gave him, the draft capital that they used. I think he's locked in for at least 3 years as your quarterback.
At least 2 more. There's no at least.
Yeah. So Sean Payton, he knows that. I mean, he could have said, no, you know what? I looked at all these teams and I'm going to stay retired. I like my gig in the booth. He wants to be the Broncos coach. He has some intrigue there, whether that is their awesome defense that you have and you don't really have to worry about them at all on that side of the ball. It's just this offense. And if you can get the most out of this offense and even turn them into a top half of the league, I mean, that's a team that could be flirting with the playoffs the way that defense is too. So I don't know. There's a lot of intrigue there, but fantasy wise, if you're a Russell Wilson owner, I think this gives you a little spark of life to maybe put him up on the trade block right now with teams that are like, oh, Sean Payton's coming in. He's going to unlock Russ. So if you were holding on to Russ for this moment, congratulations. I would unload him here the next little bit while the hype train is building with Sean Payton there.
What kind of ceiling do you see for them next year? Or I guess let's ceiling and floor, because Hackett didn't seem to adjust at all last season. And we saw the results, but now he's out. Sean Payton is going to adjust. He had that full year off. I'm sure that he did mad work on studying Broncos film and everything. There's no shock that Sean Payton, right after the season ended, or right after Nathaniel Hackett got canned, that Sean Payton was a leading candidate for that job. So I'm sure Payton over this last, what has it been, a month plus, that he's been looking at every team, studying every team's film that had an opening, and was thinking to himself, how can I fix this offense? How can I fix this team? In this case for Denver, this player in Russell Wilson. Do you think Sean Payton's good enough to ultimately turn Russell Wilson into no longer the problem, and now maybe not the solution, but no longer the problem? And then with that being said, what do you think their ceiling is and what do you think their floor is? I mean, I feel like the floor is established at 5 wins. There's no way they can go below that. I pray to God that that's not the case, because at that point you might as well go back and trade for Drew Lock. So maybe not, but what kind of floor, what kind of ceiling do you see with these guys?
I think, like you said, floor is this year. I mean, they're going to be playing a bottom schedule. They're going to play all the bottom teams in the AFC because they finished 4th in the division this year. So I don't see them losing any more than 5 games in this one. And I think
losing more than, you don't see them losing more than 5.
I mean,
winning less than 5.
Winning less than 5. Okay. Yes, is what I meant to say. Yeah, that could be their ceiling though too. If you unlock this offense, they could be a top 5 offense. If Russell Wilson shows his form that he had in Seattle for some of those years, you get a healthy Javonte Williams back, which we'll see. I mean, that's been the key, is he can't stay healthy to this point in his NFL career. But you get him back. You've got Jerry Jeudy. You've got Cortland Sutton. You've got Tim Patrick coming back this year off of his injury last year. So you've got a stud wide receiver group there. Pick up a couple linemen that hit, give him some protection. And yeah, I mean, Javonte Williams essentially could be an Alvin Kamara in this offense with Sean Payton coming in. You've got your Michael Thomas.
I like that.
you've got pieces that resemble what the Saints did and what they were very successful at. And the Saints had a good defense under Sean Payton, which the Broncos do. So I could totally see Denver turning into the perennial playoff team that the Saints were with Drew Brees. But again, it's unlocking Russell Wilson. That's the whole key to this piece. And like you said, Sean Payton had to have seen something when he was watching film that he was like, I know I'm going to be tied to him for the next 3 years, and I know what it is. I know how to fix him, and I'm going to come in. And he saw that this was a great opportunity for him to get back to the playoffs and be a Super Bowl contender.
And really, we saw Drew Brees his last year and a half to 2, at least, that he couldn't throw the ball down the field. I mean, him and Mike, that's where Michael Thomas had his breakout year, because he's a really nice possession receiver. Do you think that Jerry Jeudy possibly, who is more of that, he's both, I mean, Jerry Jeudy, if he's able to get unlocked, really talented. Cortland Sutton, more of that downfield threat, but I think Jerry Jeudy could almost turn into that Michael Thomas if used in the right way. Do you see that potential? And do you see, I guess, what if you agree on that, which you're nodding your head?
Yep.
What's Cortland Sutton's role? Because really, Cortland Sutton's a lot more of is more of a big play type of receiver. If Russell Wilson doesn't have the arm that he used to, which Russ was at one point the best deep ball thrower in the NFL, what's Cortland Sutton's new role here? I mean, and where do you put those two guys going forward in terms of, I guess either fantasy wise or just roles in the offense?
Yeah, I like Jerry Jeudy a lot better for fantasy. Like you said, he's going to be that possession receiver. And until we consistently see Russ be able to get the ball down the field, I'm staying away from Cortland Sutton. Especially this year in redraft, I'm not in on that at all. But if Russell can get that deep ball, I mean, we saw him have 2 receivers that thrived in that offense with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And essentially, that's what you have here. DK Metcalf, Jerry Jeudy, and Tyler Lockett, Cortland Sutton. But again, we didn't see a ton downfield last year, and that's where Cortland Sutton's bread and butter is. And that's why Cortland Sutton had a dog shit year this last year, because he couldn't get the ball deep. And we started to see Jerry Jeudy come on and be a lot more consistent of a player in the second half of the season.
So there's also the rumor, or I don't know if it's a rumor, I guess, according to Rap Sheet, Ian Rappaport, that this is a report that Denver's first choice as head coach was DeMeco Ryans. As I briefly mentioned earlier, he wanted to stick with Houston. That could be a compensation thing. I know the report is that he's locked into a 6-year deal. He's obviously got a relationship with ownership in Houston with the McNair family, given that he played there for, I believe, 6 years, maybe 8.
Yeah, it was a while.
And so that leaves Sean Payton as the number 2 choice by Denver. We would have assumed that that Sean Payton would be any team's number 1 choice. Do you think that that's because they just fell that hard in love for DeMeco Ryans, or because they were scared about giving up the very limited draft capital that they already have? Or maybe a combination of the two?
I think it's draft capital. I think ultimately, though, we've seen Denver the last few years. Their defense is going to be good, regardless. And I think you're better off trying to find that offensive head coach here. And I think they're better off with Sean Payton. DeMeco Ryans, yes, I think he's going to be fantastic in Houston, going back to the franchise that he was predominantly a huge part of during his career. But I don't know. And then it was funny too, because you mentioned that Rappaport had said that piece about DeMeco Ryans. And then immediately afterwards, Schefter had said, timing of today's 2 hires was completely coincidental. Broncos were zeroed in on Sean Payton. Didn't make any contact this week with DeMeco Ryans or his agent. Denver was focused on Payton and Houston on Ryans. So got the battle between Rappaport and Schefter, of course, breaking news and trying to contradict each other. So we're not sure on that. But ultimately, if Denver was trying to go after DeMeco Ryans, that was their number 1 choice, I don't blame him. I think he's a very hot head coaching candidate, and Houston ultimately got him. I don't blame Denver at all for that, but I think they got the guy that is going to be key to unlocking their success with the situation that they're in right now. You bring in DeMeco Ryans. If you're Denver, your offense is still just a shit show right now. And then he has all the pressure to try and find that offensive coordinator that's going to unlock that, where Sean Payton's kind of got that bigger picture going. He can find the coordinators that he wants to unlock that offense. And I think ultimately it's better off for both franchises.
Yeah. And Kellen Moore got hired, got snatched up in, well, what was it? 10 minutes from the news that he got let go by the Cowboys to a Chargers deal. He would have been kind of a pretty ideal offense if they had hired DeMeco Ryans. You then bring in Kellen Moore as your offensive coordinator. And right now, Russell Wilson versus Dak, kind of the same guy, at least what we've seen out of Russ at least over this past year, and throwing a lot of picks and I don't know. I think that both the Texans and the Broncos ultimately got their head coaching hires right. The Broncos, it does suck that you are going to have to give up that compensation because they are desperate. They need to reload that roster with cheap talent out of the draft, given that they're paying Russell Wilson so much over the next X amount of years. But I still ultimately think, and it'd be tough for Denver to go to another first-time head coach. They tried that with Hackett. You're going to try that again with DeMeco Ryans. You're asking for potential issues again. So I think Sean Payton is
2 first-time head coaches in a row too, because they tried the Vic Fangio experience too. Yep. Before that.
So that would have been 3 in a row if they would have gone to DeMeco Ryans. Yep. Yeah. One final note, I guess, on the coaching piece. Frank Reich hired earlier this week, or maybe that was right before the championship round. Frank Reich hired by the Carolina Panthers. I think a great hire. I mean, Reich clearly was a better coach than Jeff Saturday. Not that Jeff Saturday is setting any sort of precedent as good head coaching candidates, but I liked Frank Reich in Indy. Yeah. We'll just see if he seems like he can at least stabilize what was a god awful operation in Carolina last year and over the couple of years that Matt Rule was there. So I guess that's probably the final note on coaching hires, unless you got anything else.
No, that's it. Let's move into that NFL championship recap here. First game up was one I was looking forward to, Eagles 49ers, and it definitely disappointed, and not in the way that we thought it was going to. Eagles come away with the commanding 31-7 victory in this one, but story with this one is we didn't get to see the full potential of the 49ers. Brock Purdy ends up with a arm injury. Weren't sure what it was at the time. Josh Johnson comes in, gets a concussion, and then Brock Purdy comes back in and just hands the ball off. And we're all like, well, all right. We saw him mouthing on the sideline, I can't grip the ball. I can't throw the ball, to head coach Mike Shanahan. Come to find out, partially torn UCL right now.
A full tear.
Full torn?
Okay. Full tear. That's what I heard.
Okay. Well, okay. Yeah,
but he did say he was going for a second opinion, so maybe there's an update on that.
Okay.
Because he did say he was going for a second opinion, but I saw the first hit that it was a full tear.
Okay.
So either way, it looks like he's going to have some major elbow, either rehab or surgery. It could be Tommy John. It could be something more minor that will be closer to a 6-month recovery. If you're a baseball fan, you know Tommy John can often be a 8, 10, 12-month recovery, depending on the severity of the injury. I just feel like we got robbed, man. We got robbed of one of what I thought was going to be, we had said this on last week's recordings that we thought this was going to be the game of the weekend.
Yeah.
And we got robbed of that on the first San Francisco drive.
Yeah, that was just ugly. And then from there, I mean, Josh Johnson, he was signed off their practice squad a couple weeks back, so you can't expect a ton from him. I guess I was just more wondering why you wouldn't have a third quarterback on the roster. I know we were texting back and forth about that, and I get it. You want to have guys that are going to be out on the field, but ultimately too, if you go through two quarterbacks, you're essentially giving up the game because you don't have anyone else out there anyways. So I don't know. It just seems like too important of a position to not have a third string there during a playoff game, but I see both sides of it.
This is where, and if I'm San Fran, maybe I would think differently, because clearly they are cursed at quarterback. I mean, are you kidding? They were on basically, they were basically on QB5 if you count injured Brock Purdy. So, but really, you've got every single rule is there to protect quarterbacks. I don't think that teams are out there thinking, hey, we're going to blow through both our quarterbacks. And yes, a lot of times it's some special teams specialist that, maybe it's a gunner on special teams blocking or coverage, that usually that's, some special teams contributor. Usually that's the guy that ends up getting that final roster spot. But so that's where that's kind of how I had been thinking originally, but maybe that should probably going forward for every team. Maybe you only use that final roster spot for a special teams guy during the regular season. I think at this point, teams going forward have to roster 3 quarterbacks, 3 active guys, because this is, you're screwed. The game's over. We knew that. We almost felt like it was pretty much over once Josh Johnson came in.
Yeah.
But once he went down, we all knew this game's over. And there's literally no hope. Brock Purdy literally can't throw the ball. And you saw him throwing the ball on the sidelines. He was, he's throwing like little lollipops. Like you knew he couldn't throw the ball. So I think maybe going forward, you got to roster that third quarterback and have that third quarterback active. And maybe that backup special teams gunner isn't worth it. And you fill in that spot, because there is no filling in a third quarterback. Next question, though, for you. Do you think the right decision was made to put in Brock Purdy, who couldn't throw the ball, versus just having Christian McCaffrey back there running Wildcats? You could get really creative with that skill position group of running Wildcat with CMC, Debo possibly in the backfield. Kyle Juszczyk was also listed as an emergency quarterback. Brandon Ayuk, extremely dynamic. I don't know who. Juwan Jennings, he was a high-end college quarterback recruit. He just showed. So do you think they made the right call to use Purdy? I know in the post game, Shanahan said that he wanted to just be able to run his normal run offense and see how that went. But God, once you're down 3 touchdowns, you got to do something that's to have an attempt at being dynamic at this point. And they still just kept Brock Purdy in and having him just hand the ball off instead of trying anything, even remotely dynamic. We saw nothing even close to the word dynamic.
Yeah, I think that they should have done that for at least one series. Just see what you have with, like you said, McCaffrey. You could put Debo back there. Debo's good with some of the trick plays too, along with McCaffrey. We've seen McCaffrey throw a touchdown or throw passes here and there. But I don't know. Purdy came in, and if you know he's not going to throw the ball, the defense is just stacking the box to stop the run. So they knew exactly what was going to happen, where if you run a Wildcat, you do something else, yeah, you're going to be maybe trick them. They're going to know that more than likely you're running the ball and not going to be passing. But you still have at least the threat of, oh, he might be passing at some point in time here. Where with Brock Purdy back there hurt, there's no chance that he's passing the ball. So that definitely was something that I thought that they could have tried. But then again, at the same time with it, you run a drive of trick plays like that. How often have they really even practiced those where then you're going to be running the same 2 plays over again? But like I said, I think they should have tried it for at least one drive. I don't think it would have made a difference at all. This game was over as soon as Brock Purdy got hurt, but
probably
they should have at least tried something.
It may not have made a difference, but exactly. I mean, I still think you try something. And Juwan Jennings, again, high-end quarterback recruit. He probably could have made some throws for wide receiver screens, that kind of stuff. I mean, it turns out Purdy couldn't throw more than like 5 yards. Not just downfield, but 5 yards to the sides. Like he couldn't even throw a wide receiver screen. You'd think that CMC, Jennings, anybody, man, could have at least throw that little wrench in there and give yourself a chance. I get that. And again, I don't think they had much of a chance, but I just thought that was a pretty sad just effort, I guess, from Shanahan. It felt like he just kind of conceded, which whatever, but too bad for him.
Well, then with this game too, the Eagles now moving over to that side of the ball, they haven't been tested their first 2 games. Jalen Hurts has thrown for 154 yards, 121 yards, and that's because they haven't needed him to throw the ball. Does that concern you at all going into the Super Bowl that they haven't had to use much of their passing attack and it's been all rushing? We saw 4 rushing touchdowns in this one. Hurts ran one in, Gainwell, and then Miles Sanders had 2 as well. But does that concern you for the Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts?
It doesn't, like, not just this deal with Jalen Hurts, but let me read off their entire schedule of who they've had to play so far. It is a very underwhelming bunch. Lions, Vikings, Commanders, Jaguars, Cardinals, Cowboys, Steelers, Texans, Commanders, Colts, Packers, Titans, Giants, Bears, Cowboys, Saints, Giants, and then in the divisional round, Giants last week, Niners on a 5th string quarterback. Where are the impressive wins? There's no impressive wins here from the Eagles. They never had to face a high-end AFC team. Their AFC teams they faced, it was the NFC or AFC South.
Yeah.
That whole division is garbage. And that was back when the Jags were not playing well. So their impressive wins are not totally non-existent, but relatively non-existent. So how good is this Eagles team? I don't know. I mean, they look good. They have a sweet roster. Hassan Reddick has just come out of nowhere to be an absolute beast. I know when the Cardinals drafted him, 6-7 years ago, it was like he was a project, but he was supposed to pop at some point. He never did with Arizona, and that's why they let him go. But he has officially popped. That dude has now elevated to one of the higher end pass rushers in the league. But where are their impressive wins? I don't know. I can't. I just read those teams. I can't find one. So, I mean, I think the Eagles are legit. I think Jalen is legit. I think that defense is legit. That pass rush is legit. You obviously know that offensive line. It's probably the best in the NFL. And that's going to play anywhere. That's going to play well against any opponent. But I think we need to... Is Jalen Hurts more injured than we really thought?
Yeah.
Look at his passing. Like you read off his passing numbers. Is he more injured than we thought? Because that injury happened against the Bears. I mean, it was 6 weeks ago at this point. It'll be 8 weeks or just under 8. It'll be, about 8 weeks by the time, 7-8 weeks by the time that they play. But his passing has not been the same since that injury. They're not throwing the ball that much, but when they do, it's not downfield much. I mean, really, he only had one downfield attempt, and that was the Devontae Smith catch, quote unquote catch. And after review, it was actually a drop. But he might be more injured than we think. But that Eagles running game is still legit. We saw Miles Sanders running a couple tutties. You still got Devontae Smith that can do some end around work or line up in the backfield on, if he needs to. Eagles are legit, but I don't know. I'm a little scared about the Jalen Hurts deal and the fact that they haven't really been tested. This was supposed to be this would have been their first major test of the year, and they get bailed out by both quarterbacks going down.
Yeah, and with both quarterbacks going down in the injury history for San Francisco, what do you think is next for them? I mean, we were just talking last week about, would you trade Brock Purdy if somebody offered a first round, or trade Trey Lance? And now they don't have any trade value for either of these guys because you don't know the extent of Brock Purdy's injury, and you don't know what it's going to look like come training camp. They're going to have to hold both of these guys now. So obviously you're going to have Brock Purdy should be probably their starter going into the season next year, I would think. But I don't know. What do you see next from the 49ers?
Tom Brady. I'm not saying that's done, but do you think about Tom Brady seeing if he can come over for 20 million, 25, or probably want more than that, but 25, 30 million? You've got next year tied up about, it was like 8 to 9 million in Trey Lance, and you're paying Purdy like, again, under $1 million. Do you go after TB12? He hasn't been hurt since 2008, since that ACL. He has not missed significant time. Season. This could be like, he's been one of the most durable quarterbacks in the NFL. And if he gets hurt, then you know that Kyle Shanahan is just cursed. But I mean, but at this point, Jimmy G clearly can't stay healthy. Trey Lance, he's barely been on the field. Like, you have no idea what you have in him. Brock Purdy, one of the big reasons why he fell to the 7th round is height. He's about 6 feet tall, and not the strongest arm. Very efficient, very, very efficient. Had a great half season with the Niners, put up really nice numbers. I would not be afraid of going into next season with Purdy as my starter. But this is now, you've got a throwing elbow injury. Who knows how he's going to come back after that? TB12, come on home. Come on home to San Fran, man. Your parents live there. If you having a rough day, you're still a little sad about Giselle, you can always go and hang out with mom and dad and, crying their arms or whatever. Like, come on, Tom, come on home. I think it's possible. I think it's much more possible now than pre-Purdy injury.
Yeah, no, I for
more
sure
like Brock Purdy.
But yeah, I mean, he would be perfect in that offense because they don't require you to spread the field, get the ball down the field at all. It's usually short passes, it's end arounds. They've got a good running back there. They've got a great defense. So I think Tom Brady would thrive there and give them a great chance to win a Super Bowl. But will San Francisco suck up their pride and say, yeah, Trey Lance, this didn't work out. We traded up for you, but you're essentially going to be done and not a 49er. And that's what is hard because you've got a lot of pride and a lot of egos inside the NFL, and that's a huge one to swallow if you're bringing in Tom Brady and essentially ending any Trey Lance era.
That's fine. Okay. Send him away for a second. I mean, if he can't play, if you're a GM, if you're John Lynch, this is John Lynch's call. If you're John Lynch, if you can get a second for Lance and replace that with Tom Brady, that's a second and Brady for Trey Lance. Think about it that way. you make that trade if you're in San Francisco's position, as long as Brady isn't going to want $40 million at that, because obviously you couldn't afford that. So look, you'd have to look at it that way rather than and just say, yeah, we screwed up drafting Lance. And if somebody ends up grabbing Lance and he turns out into the player that we thought he was going to be when we drafted him at 3 overall, you just kind of suck it up. But if you end up with a title now with Brady, you make that move. Yeah. I mean, CMC, you can't be thinking, I really don't think San Fran should be thinking long-term. CMC, how much longer is he going to be in his prime? Deebo Samuel's already, he's like 2 months younger than Tyreek Hill. It feels like Tyreek has been in the league forever just because he's been so relevant, but he's already 27 or 28. I think Deebo's 27. George Kittle's been in the league even longer than, I think he's 29, and he's taken a beating. He's been injured a ton. He's almost kind of turned into Gronk, where Gronk retired at 32 or 33 because he's out there just taking a beating every single play. Trent Williams, not young. Some of these offensive linemen, not young. Now is the time. So I would be much less focused on the future of Trey Lance and be much more focused on how do we get this done in the next year or two before CMC. We can't afford an extension with him. Deebo, we'll just ride his ass and he's going to eventually fall off because we're going to abuse the shit out of him. Kittle's going to fall off at some point over the next few years. I think now has to be the time for San Fran, especially considering the NFC quarterbacks are not very strong. It's nothing like the AFC. So if you can get away with Tom Brady, now is the time to win. If you're any team in the NFC that wants to contend.
Yeah, no, we'll see.
There is no Allen. There is no Burrow. There is no Mahomes in the AFC. There's no Lamar in the AFC or in the NFC. Sorry, at least right now. So I think now you got to focus on that and screw the future. Screw Trey Lance. You're already giving up the future with all those trades you made for CMC all those draft picks you gave up for McCaffrey. So it kind of feels like that should happen.
Yeah. Speaking of Mahomes and Joe Burrow, Jill had that battle in the afternoon. That was a lot better game to say. Chiefs end up coming away with the victory here, 23-20, due to last second unnecessary roughness penalty cost the Bengals 15 yards, put Chiefs in field goal range and knocked down the field goal. Was this one of the worst officiated games you've ever seen? I mean, I can't really think of one other than the Fail Mary, the replacement ref here. But
you had to
outside of replacement refs, this game was all over the board with officiating.
I just the one play that stands out to me. And okay, first off, let's talk about the final call on the Mahomes shove out of bounds. Anybody that says that should not have been called, walk your ass home.
Yeah, that was 100% a penalty.
That's the most obvious flag of all time. So regardless of scenario and situation, Mahomes had both feet out of bounds for a while. He had given himself up. So just stop making that argument if you're trying to. But the play before that that started off that drive, or I guess, quote unquote, kicked off that drive, was that punt return. Where Sky Moore ended up taking that ball, receiving it at about the 25, had a 24-yard punt return, and the most obvious call, I could see it live. There was a very obvious block in the back on the, as that Bengal was going right at Sky Moore, he got shoved in the back and couldn't make the tackle. We see a ton of BS block in the back calls every single week. And for them to miss that call, that's the quote unquote block that really sparked that run. So that's the play that stands out a ton for me, because once that was, I mean, let's be honest, once you saw Moore return that ball to midfield, you had to know that game is over. It's just going to happen for KC. So that's the missed call that really stands out for me.
Yeah, that one. And then it just seemed like the Bengals were shooting themselves in the foot too with some of their timely penalties, I guess. So you had that clock gaff in the quarter that
that was messed up.
That was so messed up. And then to come out the next play and get a defensive holding call, and it just spiraled, it seemed like. But it was always at the worst possible times for the Bengals in this one, and not the cleanest game that we wanted to see. Ultimately, we did see a great game, and the Chiefs ended up again with the victory in this one on Patrick Mahomes, quote unquote, high ankle sprain. I mean, he's hurt, but I don't know. He didn't look like a high ankle sprain. I mean,
how much did it really? He threw for 326 yards, multiple touchdowns. And there's obviously different severities to a sprain, but God, where is he in terms of the GOAT status at this point? Because that was probably his best performance of his career. I know he's won title games and stuff before. He won a Super Bowl, but that's probably the most impressed I've ever been, because he was hobbled and just didn't allow that injury to affect him that much until after the play was over, and then he'd be, hopping on one foot on the way back to the huddle. But during the play, he just did not let that ankle affect him at all. And that's insanely impressive. I mean, if we're talking GOAT status, if he were to retire today, I'm not saying he's going to be, number one guy out there, but GOAT potential, we got to be talking GOAT potential right now, which I hate to do, because that's the cheap, like, first take talk, Stephen A to start screaming at everybody about. But, like, I mean, let's be honest. What does outside of the rings, can you find a quarterback who in the history of football has better in just combination of arm talent, pre-snap stuff, post-snap stuff, like improvising on the fly, like just straight up arm talent, knowing when to check the ball down, knowing when, hey, I've got an opportunity. Oh my God, I see a guy open and the ball is already out before he's open. Like it's like almost like a combination of, but he's got to wait. Like it's like Peyton Manning's brain, maybe Brady's like pre-snap stuff, like being able to get the ball out quick. And then one of the best arms we've seen in terms of both being able to throw the ball downfield and accuracy. It's like this, he is just the complete package, and the fact that he's able to do that and just be able to, during the play, ignore the fact that he's got this bum ankle. It's like, this guy is the total package.
Yeah. Just wish he had like, you could throw like Lamar's speed in there or something like that. But
imagine
outside of that, that's about it.
But he's still plenty mobile.
Yeah, for sure.
Like he ran for that first down when he got shoved out of bounds. It's like he's still mobile, plenty mobile enough. So he might be on his way, man. He might be on his way.
Yeah, a couple more rings. That's what everybody grades you by. That's for sure. Speaking of grading, Bengals obviously had a phenomenal season this year, high grades there. What is next for them? I mean, they're going to be already talking about Joe Burrow extending him, getting that deal down. So it's one that we talked about numerous weeks here, where you like having that quarterback on the rookie deal. I mean, it's a well-deserved contract for Joe Burrow, but I think for them, the main thing is I think they're going to be the AFC North, the team to beat for the years to come. And it's just keeping this core of guys together. That's the biggest thing, is that you've got a nice team right now. You got a nice group of guys, and just to find a way to make sure that they stay together and keep running it back.
See, I think that the one guy that may be the guy out is Mixon. Samaje Perine outsnapped Joe Mixon in this game by 20 snaps after Burrow got hit 3 times early in the first. It was like Joe Mixon's role was reduced significantly because Perine is the much better passing back. Mixon's deal is up. I don't know if I believe they can get off his deal this year. And that's quite a bit of chunk of change off the books. And they owe Burrow that extension. I hope Burrow doesn't go out there and command $50 million a year, because I do want to see this team stay intact. But I think Joe Mixon is the early easy guy out on this team. And you got Samaje Perine, you've got Chris Evans. Those are 2 role players. Maybe you grab, if Bijan Robinson falls to you at that number, what would that be? 29 or 30 overall, probably. Yeah. If Bijan Robinson falls to you, that makes the letting go of Mixon extremely easy. And then you just plug and play there. I think Mixon's is the odd man out within this crew, because to see him get out snapped like that against Perine, versus Perine, it's so obvious that's such an obvious glaring weakness in Mixon's game. And if they're not running unless they're in the lead and able to run the ball, Mixon's value is so diminished that he's probably not worth paying a $10-12 million contract plus that he's going to want. So I see Mixon as the odd man out here. I think T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, those guys, those are must re-signs.
Yeah.
T. Higgins is due a deal now. Burrow's due a deal now. Jamar Chase, you can probably wait a year. I just think Mixon's the odd man out here.
Yeah, and that might be an area that they're going to have to cut costs in order to make the Joe Burrow contract work for not only this year, but for the future as well. So that very well could be. And that's an area that a lot of teams end up doing that. You cut the veteran running back and you go with the cheap rookie option to help out. And like you said, Mixon, that is a weakness for them with that passing game that you just not utilize with that. And Samaje Perine somehow is still out there. I don't know. He does not look good either, though.
No, he doesn't. Yeah. They need to go draft a guy. And if Bijan falls, grab him in the first. If they need to, and then if he doesn't, grab a guy in the second. Yeah. I think that's the obvious. Maybe even
second round of Jahmyr Gibbs if he's still around or something. Or
and Jahmyr Gibbs would fit that room really well, given his pass receiving ability as well. So I would love that for them.
Yeah. Anything else from this game, Joe?
That's it.
All right. Give me that golf swing. We are on to the Farmers Insurance Open, where Max Homa with the victory, shoots a 6 under final round to get to 13 under on the day. Kind of came out of nowhere for the most part. Just had a really hot stretch on Sunday, coupled with Sam Ryder just falling apart, shot 3 over in his final round, had the solo lead heading into that Sunday. And not only was he +3 on that final round, +3 on the last 4 holes, double bogey and a bogey mixed in there. So it was an entertaining tournament. You'd like to see at least somebody in that final group in contention. And as soon as they hit their tee shots, Max Homa was crowned the winner, because they would have had to hole out on a par 5 from the tee box in order to tie. So it was not the case in this one, but star-studded field and a fantastic tournament all around.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see Sam Ryder up there. He was vying for his first PGA win in his career. He really had one of his biggest, if not his biggest, career moment last season with his hole-in-one on 16 at the Phoenix.
Yep.
Where everybody's, throwing
we
beer
saw
cans.
That highlight 40 times during the Farmers Open this weekend.
Yeah, I guess I should say, in case you weren't watching at all, I'm sure if you were watching even for 20 minutes, I'm sure you saw that highlight. But yeah, I mean, it's good to see him get some recognition. Like, this is the first time he's been in legitimate contention. Good to see some of that, but this was a clear choke job. It kind of felt like, I mean, I get that it's never easy to, close out a tournament, but he'd been playing really well the first 3.5 days. And then that final 9, he just, like you said, just kind of broke down. And we had a couple guys also on that final day, Keegan Bradley and Colin Morikawa. They kind of tried to storm back, especially Keegan. Morikawa looked like he was about to storm back. And then he ended up with a bogey, I believe, on 17 that pretty much finished off his day. But I don't know. It felt like with how hot Homa got in that final day, kind of once he got to the back 9, it was like Homa one shot back. Ryder was at -14. Homa was at -13. You just had kind of a feeling like this is Homa's tournament. So glad to see him get that W there. And even with Sam Ryder in the lead, you just kind of had a little bit of a feeling that Max Homa was going to take it home, which he did. So happy for him. As far as our picks go, Jason Day, John Rahm both finished at T7 with a -8 score. So we will carry those over into this next weekend.
Yeah, and kind of a totally different tournament for both of those guys. Jason Day came out hot playing the North and the South course the first 2 days and easily made the cut. And Rahm had to scrape together to get by on that second day at the North course to make the cut, and then ended up having a great Saturday.
He did not play well enough on that North on Saturday or on third or whatever the second day was.
Friday. Yeah, he needed to shoot a lot better, but ultimately he was in that final group heading into Sunday, but just fell apart on Sunday. And yeah, but otherwise, yeah, good start for both of those guys. And it's hoping to maybe get a couple strokes back there using John Rahm, but ultimately glad to make the cut and at least keep within the
not falling back at least.
That is correct. All right, that'll wrap up this episode. It can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Go to YouTube, Dead Arm Sports, that search bar. Subscribe, click the bell there. That way you know when our live episodes drop. We monitor that chat. You can ask us any questions there. You missed us there. Gel can be found at Das Gel. I can be found at Das JPEG. At Dead Arm Sports on all of our socials. Make sure you give us a follow there. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot and you will get some swag. Jill, what are those platforms?
Hit us up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts. Make sure to find us on YouTube as well at Dead Armor Sports there. Subscribe there. Hit that bell to make sure that you get all of our notifications, putting out new content whenever we go live, whatever. We are monitoring that chat box. So whenever you guys have any questions, we will be there live to take care of your written needs.
Well, we'll be back with you tomorrow. Gonna dive into our NFL and fantasy football awards. Think that's a little overdue, but nonetheless, we have that for you tomorrow. Find out who our picks are for quite a few different categories there, and we will have our Pebble Beach preview as well. That's kicking off on Thursday this week, and Joe, close her out.
Fun fact, Denver Broncos have had 3 significant Paytons over the last 15 years. Of course, Sean Payton just took this job. Peyton Manning took the Broncos to a Super Bowl championship a few years back. And don't forget, back in 2008, the Broncos' 7th round pick, Peyton Hillis.
Gosh.